Guys, welcome to the Laying Foundations podcast. This is your co-host Davis Hambrick. Joining alongside me today is Walker Lott. What's up, Walker?
Hey, Davis. Good morning, man. I'm excited about today's podcast. We have an awesome guest on. Really good dude, really good company. So I'm excited to hear more about him.
Yeah, man, let's jump right into it. Today, guys, we are going to interview an awesome guest named Gareth McGlynn. He is the managing director at Niche SSP, and he's also the Preconstruction Podcast host. One of the things I really like about Gareth is that you can tell his enthusiasm and passion that he has with every conversation you have with him. And I'm just, it's a refreshing perspective, and we're excited to have him on today. What's up, Gareth?
Hey guys, how are you? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Man.
Hopefully this year is a little bit different than the last one.
Yeah, I think everybody woke up in 2021 expecting everything to be gone and everything to be back to normal. It ain't gonna happen like that.
No, it's
We've
not.
we've got another 6 months, and hopefully we'll see some sort of normality.
Yeah, that's for sure. How is it up there in New York? You got snow up there. You got stuff going. I mean, y'all pretty heavily locked down up there still, aren't you?
Yeah. There's not much happening. It is a quiet New York City. If anybody hasn't been here in the last 12 months, it's completely different. It's obviously, listen, the weather's still the same, but people around the place, the buzz, the reason people come to New York City is just not here not at the minute. And I just pray to God we see it coming back in the next 6 to 12 months.
Well,
Yeah. Well, let's kind of transition here, Gareth. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're doing now, and maybe a little bit about your background, growing up.
Cool. Thanks, Davis. So Gareth McGlynn, obviously founder or co-founder actually with my wife, Kira, of the Niche SSP. And then I've started the podcast in January. But if I can take it way back, my kind of upbringing was quite different to New York City. I grew up on a farm. So we say cattle, turnips, carrots, growing veg, sheep, slaughterhouses. My father worked in a slaughterhouse for his whole life. My mom was a teacher, so it was quite a humble upbringing. I would always describe myself as shy, kind of was a little bit introverted and not the most outgoing person in the world. But I think sport was the thing that kind of changed that for me. I found my love in football, but which was soccer that you guys know it as in the US. It's really football, but we'll talk about that another time. So football, and I just loved it. Sport. I was always a little bit athletic, so played that the whole way through secondary school or high school, as you guys would say it, and then played Gaelic as well in Hurley, which was the two Irish native games. Great games. If you haven't Googled it, Google Hurley, Hurley, or sometimes it's called hurling. Quite a brutal sport with a small ball. It's kind of like lacrosse, only it's with a bat, and you've got the same sort of headgear. We don't have any padding because we're much harder and tougher in Ireland than you guys are. But so to play that up to 16, then I had a decision to make. Was going well in all four sports, but my parents, no, sorry, it wasn't really my parents, it was my football club, Derry City Football Club, kind of said, listen, we're going to offer you a professional contract, but you're going to have to give up the other two sports, which I loved. So I was a little bit disappointed with that, but obviously the lure of earning small amount of money to go and play professional sport is every kid's dream. So did that, finished school, and of course my parents asked me, what do you want to do now? And I says, well, I just want to play football and get paid for it. That's like the dream. I don't see why you asked me this rhetorical question. Of course, that's what I want to do. I don't want to go now and study and become a teacher or an engineer or a philosopher. So my parents says, oh, is that right? So you're going to go and play football. So what happens if football doesn't work out? And I said, well, as a kid, you just never think about that. So they said, listen, Gareth, you can go and play football on one condition. You've got to go and get a degree first. And I says, well, seems like a good deal. Spend 4 years. So it was good because I could play professional football and study at the same time because of the university was in the city of the football team. So I says, yeah, let's do it. So went and did that. didn't really know what to do, to be honest with you. It was kind of, at the time, it was the IT boom, and everyone was in IT. So I decided to do engineering, which was kind of IT and engineering background. I I so I just so I decided to do that engineering. It was a great decision because I really like to build stuff, but IT was the buzz thing, so it was a good compromise. So I did that for graduated in 2006. Continued then afterwards, playing soccer. Went to Australia for a couple of years in 2013. And then relocated from Australia, Perth, Australia, over to New York in 2015. So that gives you a little bit of the background.
That's awesome, man. So you went to all these different countries and everything, got to play soccer, like soccer, football, soccer in America. We can debate that later. But so you came to America, right? And you started, when did you start your estimating career? So you started it in Europe, right? And then you transitioned?
Yeah, so I've always had a love for construction. So when I went to Australia, obviously played professional sport up until 2012, and I was like 29 at the time, and I was kind of like any sports person coming to end their career. Oh shit, what am I going to do now after I finish sport? Because there's a finite amount of time where you can earn decent money. And listen, I'm not talking about the kind of money that NFL players or even MLS players play. Ireland's Premier Division was a daily wage, so the same as a construction professional, blue labor, white collar, whatever, that kind of salary. So I really needed to go and think about my next step, So I went then to Australia. Didn't know, literally got on the plane. Me and my wife, I had been to Australia a few times. My wife had did a lot of traveling throughout that time, and I just thought Perth, Australia was the most beautiful part of the world that I had been. So I convinced her, say, listen, let's go to Australia for a couple of years, try it out, see what happened. So her background was sales and marketing, and mine was football. Who's going to employ an ex-footballer? Like the old what would they say? The stigma of football and sports people aren't the brightest people in the world, and I was a little bit worried. So went to Australia, played part-time, so earned a few quid there just to keep myself going, but then got into construction and used my engineering degree. So was an engineer in the mines in Australia. So that's iron ore and oil and gas. So it's remote out in the mines. You fly in, fly out. I was working for 4 weeks, had a week off. So it was 4-in-1 was the kind of agenda that I was on, and it was unbelievable experience. Literally, you were out in the middle of nowhere. You were building these huge. Have you ever played Mousetrap when you were a kid? The ball goes the ball goes across the conveyor belts, then it goes into the down the kind of I would call it a crusher, then out to another conveyor belt down the kind of slide. We were building huge amounts of these for iron ore. So basically the iron ore was being mined, going on the conveyor belts as rocks, put into the crusher to get into almost dust like, then more conveyor belts over out onto the port at Pilbara, onto the reclaimer, and then put onto boats, which then took it to China to be made into steel. So I was building and helping SMP Engineering build these recliners and conveyor belts. So fascinating work, great work. So I did that for a while. Then I went back down to Perth. To be honest with you, the fly in, fly out was taking its toll on me. It's tough work, and you need to be fully committed to it. I needed something more to suit my personality. At that stage, because of football, I was a lot more outgoing, and I just love people. I love socializing. So while I was up in the mines, my wife had interviewed to a few places about doing recruitment, and she had explained what my background was, and the recruitment company said, this sounds like someone that would be good at recruitment. Have him come in and have a chat with us. So I then started my recruitment career within construction in Australia. So I did that for 2 years. Then we relocated to New York and did recruitment within construction in New York as well.
Oh, that's awesome, Gareth. Talk a little bit about what you were doing specifically. You said you were the engineer in Australia. Were you having to do any types of, labor, or was it all, just office work?
No, it was all on site. So it was all on site, going in QA QC engineer. So making sure everything was as it should be structurally. A little bit of groundwork as well, and just basically making sure that everything was built as was on the plans. But a great experience. Listen, I was a junior engineer because I had no real experience since college in 2006. It was very very very. I was almost shadowing two fully qualified engineers, so I was learning a lot. It was just like I was just asking questions, being as observant, and basically getting as much out of it as I needed to. But a great experience nonetheless, especially at such a huge operation as they are in our industry.
Man, that's awesome. That sounds like an incredible experience, especially being around massive machines and in the dirt world like that. I mean, it's been being around people who know what they're doing. That's always the best. I've found that's always the best way to learn. You know, you can read books, you can watch videos, but just being around someone who knows what they are talking about is incredible.
Yeah, and I was really lucky, Walter, that I had a couple of engineers that were willing to give up their time, and they were willing to give up their time, but also that industry that I was in, it wasn't fast paced, so it wasn't your residential commercial construction that's fast paced, and these engineers haven't got 2 seconds to kind of explain themselves. But out there, it's really safety focused, so you can't do anything without doing some sort of safety. What did they call it out there? It was like a checklist to make sure that what you were going to do was going to be done in a safe manner. So there was loads of time for me to get one-on-one time with the engineers and the project managers and the construction managers, and really asked questions.
Sounds like it. So going off of that, you know, you're in the mines now, and then you start your recruitment career from there and make your way to New York. Explain to us when you made your transition from working for a recruitment company and learning there to starting your own company with your wife and kind of going out on your own, and what was that transition like? What was that process like? I mean, did you feel like you weren't qualified to do it? Just tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I always had a little bit of an entrepreneurial spirit. I back in Ireland, I had already had an events company. Again, playing football and professional sports, you train. We used to train twice on a Monday. We used to have a Tuesday off. We used to train on a Wednesday morning, Thursday morning, play a game on a Friday night, and train on a Sunday morning. So it was 6 days a week, but it was like one full day and 5 half days, if you know what I mean. So there's a lot of time on our hands. And I think that's where you see a lot of sports people taking the wrong choices during that time. When you have a lot of time in your hands, you've got to fill it with something. And I was always pretty conscious of filling it with good things. So I would always like to ask people questions and look into things. So I started up an events company running casino nights for like weddings and fundraisers. So that kind of entrepreneurial spirit was always in me. But when I got into recruitment, really enjoyed it, dealing with people, making people happy, especially on the candidate side, making someone coming to me with a problem. Listen, I need to relocate here, or I've got this issue at work. I don't think this is the right career for me. I need to change careers. There's something satisfying about that. It's not as good as scoring a goal in front of 10,000 people, but it's a close second. And the competitiveness of the industry was something I thrived on as well. I mean, being a sports person, you're always trying to drive yourself to be the best, and recruitment's very similar. And then the social side of it that I really enjoy as well. But yeah, going in and starting my own business, it's tough. Like there's nobody out there it's tough. I made a lot of mistakes. I'm lucky that I had 2 or 3 people. I call them mentors now. Some people call them non-executive directors, but I didn't go as far as that. I just had even people outside of recruitment in other industries, just simple questions. It's like you guys reached out to me about the podcast. It's invaluable. It's a small thing that you were thinking on that you would need to research for 6 months. You ask somebody the question and they'll tell you, and you can fix it within hours. It's just invaluable. So I had a couple of really good mentors on that that helped set me up. Don't get me wrong, first 2 years was difficult. working in a bedroom myself with just a telephone and a computer. It's there was some long nights, long days. We had just started a family at that time. My oldest is 4.5, coming 5 now in April. So it was tough. But we got there, and you always get through it. You always, again, the drive. There's loads of times that I thought, you know what, I could just kind of stop this now and go and get a job and just take the pressure off. But I like the pressure.
Yeah, it sounds like it from playing in soccer. Let's transition here. I like what you're talking about, your story. Some of the qualities I see is humble beginnings as a farmer. Then you're going and working, and after your professional career, you're starting and wanting to be a sponge, and now you have an entrepreneurial spirit and starting your own company. I think these qualities have definitely shaped you for who you are. But can we take a step back and talk about one of those instances, maybe where you weren't as humble, or maybe you didn't have this entrepreneurial spirit? But let's talk about you going out to a job site and thinking you know everything, and just try to be as honest as possible.
So a great example of this is during, we call it a placement year. So my degree is 4 years, but in the third year you go out and work in a company. So I worked in Dublin, which is capital of Ireland. It's a company called, I think it was called NetSuite at the time, but it was bought by Microsoft about a couple of years after that. But again, in college, doing well, getting decent grades, decent marks on assignments and practical work, going in thinking I was pretty good at this, and just being blown away and going, this is nothing like I imagined. Like this is not what I was studying in school. Like why? And I started to ask myself questions in lectures and the business. Why were you teaching me this stuff in school that basically I have no use of in the day-to-day operations of your business? So that was a real rude awakening. I found it tough, to be honest with you. It was a 12-month placement, and at that time, and again, it was only the start of, I was quite shy even at the start of my professional career, even in college. I only started really coming out of my shell probably in my 24, 25, mid-20s. And I started asking questions and being a bit more braver on that and brasher. So even during the placement, like I went through 6 months of hell. I was like not asking questions, not telling the guys, listen, this is not what we did at college. Can you show me? I was lucky that there was a couple of guys there that helped me, but yeah, that helped me a lot. It taught me that I need to be more open, more honest. If I don't know something, say it that you don't know it. Make sure there's deliverables set out on what you expect me. I literally went down. The guy said, listen, you're going to be an automation engineer. And I turned around and went, I just nodded my head as if to say, yeah, instead of going, what's that? Like, tell me what I'm going to be doing on a day-to-day basis. Tell me why you want me to do this. Tell me how my job fits in with the overall plan of the company. And also that would have felt me a little bit more a part of the team and a little bit more important. But I didn't do that, and I struggled and paid for it for 6 months. It was tough.
Yeah, I think I can kind of relate with you on that. Being in college, I always had a job, but I always pursued internships, in construction. And one of those things was, I was an introvert as well. And so, like you said, it's as simple as just asking a question, saying, "Hey guys, I don't know what this is. If you find that person, can you tell me what this is?" And if you listen, you lead. If you listen, you learn and lead with questions. It'll help you. It'll change your life. So I like that a lot, Gareth. Appreciate that.
100%. And at the end of the day, like what's the worst can happen? The guy can say no, or it can kick you out of the internship. Kicks you out of the internship,
Right.
you probably never wanted to be there anyway. If he's going
Right.
to do that, you would have had 6 months of torture anyway. Not the guy not speaking to you or answering your questions. So I put something up on LinkedIn there the other day. There literally isn't a bad question that you can ask, but not asking a question can be fatal. It really can. It can set you back. Set you back so much time.
Yeah, well, I think it's, the fear of rejection. Once you get past that, I think that's part of the entrepreneurial spirit that you have. You have to have no fear of rejection, because I'm sure you've had to have failed. Like you said, you fail multiple times, and you just have to learn to pick yourself back up. And, that's life.
Mm. And even rejection is probably the best of them all, because if the guy says no, then or you ask a question and somebody says no, or I'm not answering that, then you've now got a load of other questions that you need to ask. Why did he not help me? Why is he saying no? That then opens up a can of worms, and it helps yourself develop, which is even more important.
That's man, just this advice that you given is, worth the weight in gold. I mean, for anyone, especially people coming into the industry, because what I think most people don't realize, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that like, you're not gonna, well, for one, like you already mentioned, you're not gonna know everything coming in, but the people that you surround yourself with are going to be the people that help you grow the most. So if you, like you said, if you surround yourself with people who are not going to answer your questions, who give you one word answers, or who don't ask questions, and that's how you're going to be. You're going to be someone who just kind of takes what's given to you and then just goes about life and always wondering what what something is, but being afraid to ask that question. I know I had a project manager in my last internship who said, look, man, sit in the meetings, and if you don't know something, if there's a word that comes across that you've never heard before, or a process or anything, write it down and then come and ask me about it afterwards, and I'll explain it to you. And if I don't know what that is myself, we'll figure it out together. But he's just very open, honest, saying, hey, let me know what you have and come and ask me. He'd take an hour or two out of his already very busy day of running a $300-400 million project, and spend time just answering questions and explaining how processes work, which was invaluable.
Leader right there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And Walker, you think about it, right? I mean, as much as people say, when companies hire graduates, they're not really hiring the stuff that you for the stuff that you learned at college. They're just hiring you because they know that you can be disciplined and complete a task, which was your education. They're hiring energy, they're hiring passion, enthusiasm. And if you don't get that across in the interview, you have no chance of getting that job. You got to ask questions. You got to have, now there's a fine line. Well, not even a fine line. I think you can't ask too many questions, but you don't want to be sitting there kind of interviewing the interviewer. Otherwise, they're going to say, oh my God, this guy's just going to take up all of my staff's time by asking questions. But practical, methodical questions about what the role entails, what's kind of the deliverables, what's expected of you. There's loads of great questions that'll really open up your mind to what you're going into, but also give the interviewer an idea of what personality, and also another thing is personality, getting your personality across, because that's important. People are a little bit afraid to put themselves out there in case somebody doesn't like them, but it's refreshing when it comes across.
Yeah, I mean, that's huge. It's kind of like the old saying, what is it? Is it listen to understand and not listen to respond? I feel like so many people will take something in of what someone's saying just so, and they're already thinking about their response. They're not even listening to what the person is saying, what the interviewer is saying, or the guest or whatever. And I know I'm guilty of that. I've done that many times in my life. So that's the skill that I'm really trying to learn, is just, hey, what is he saying? How is he saying it? And what is the kind of the under the earth, under the surface level meaning behind that, and to be able to respond and answer better. But Gareth, going off of what you said, kind of transitioning a little bit, you talked about coming across many problems in your career or in your daily, your struggle, and finding those mentors and finding the people that can answer the questions. What are some of the most common problems that you face on a daily basis, being a business owner, being in the construction world? What are some of the things that you come across daily, and what are some of the things that you have come across that really challenged you to try to find the answer, to try to seek out advice?
Okay, so it's kind of twofold. One, as a business owner, is staying ahead of the curve, whether that be technology, trends, marketing, business, accounting. It's difficult. It really is. As an entrepreneur and as a small business, I mean, we're a small business in the grand scheme of things. Trying to compete is difficult. So staying ahead of the leading edge technology. We're changing our CRM system at the moment, and it takes a lot of time, but it's time well spent. And I think getting people that are highly skilled at each each thing, whether that's graphic designer, marketing guy, accounting lady, whatever it is, getting the person that can do the job and paying them accordingly. That's one thing that I've learned along the way. Not taking any cutting any corners. It's really difficult because it only wastes your time otherwise. On a day-to-day when I'm recruiting, it's really is managing people's expectations, giving people a clear and honest insight into to what's out there, both candidate and client. So telling a candidate, listen, this is the state of the market. This is my honest opinion. This is what you should be expecting, and giving them good, honest advice and giving them value-added service, and not just somebody ringing you up and going, oh yeah, I've had 10 companies in the last 3 years. I mean, that person, for me to work with that person, I can't charge my clients 25% because they wouldn't pay it. And they expect the best, but it's then taking the time to go through that person and giving them honest advice on what they should do next, whether it's upskilling themselves or whether it's looking at certain companies and going directly. Because I know what it's like. I've been there. I've been there as a candidate. It's frustrating when you're dealing with recruitment companies. We get a bad reputation, but it's taking 2 minutes out of your day to help someone. So that on the candidate side. And the client side, it's managing their expectation on the skills that are out there and trying to find the right pain point from them, because they could turn around and say, I'm looking for a senior estimator. And the more you drill down on that, they're actually looking for a BD guy to go out and win business. So it's just asking as much questions. Again, going back to the old saying is asking questions, making my job easier, making sure that we get the right candidates for the right client, because it can be difficult. There's no doubt about it. This isn't an easy industry, and that's kind of why I enjoy it. It's challenging every day. You don't know what you come into work, and you don't know what you're going to come up against. And then the satisfying side of it is really, really just getting people. I mean, there was a guy rang us up a couple of months ago saying, listen, I've just lost my job due to COVID. My wife's just about to give birth. I need a company to be able to hopefully get healthcare as well. And we were able to secure that pretty quickly. So that sort of thing is just, you can't put a dollar amount on that. It's just the game.
Yeah, that's awesome, Gareth. So we've talked a little bit about getting your personality out during interviews. We've talked about you being on the recruitment side. Tell us about how you started Niche SSP and where did this idea come from?
I've always, even in Australia, when I've got my first job in construction, I did estimators and pre-construction. Now I was given a complete control of starting up my own desk in Australia. So estimating a pre-construction was always the most difficult person and thing to fill, job to fill. So I thought, and it was always neglected. Even when I was working there, they were saying, don't be worrying about estimators and pre-construction. Those guys are too far behind. Fill project manager, superintendent. There's plenty of those guys about. There's plenty of jobs. So I did a little bit of everything down there. Then I went to New York and actually did IT, believe it or not. So I did IT recruitment, which I really enjoyed for 2 years. But it was always in the back of my hand that this industry was always underserviced. This pre-construction and estimating, not only that, but it's growing. I mean, if you look at a general contractor right now, there's probably 75% filled with operations and 25% filled with pre-construction. I see that changing completely. I see that going 50-50 over the next 5 to 10 years. So the need and the lack of talent out there is only going to get worse. So and also estimators and pre-construction, I would kind of be like that. I enjoy numbers. I like working out the costs of things, attention to detail. So it's nice chatting to these guys and geeking out with them. So that's kind of where the idea came up. But there was always a gap in the market that I felt that I could fill. And my wife being a great recruiter as well, that helped. So she came in and hit the ground running and understood estimators and pre-construction and construction pretty quickly.
So like any great entrepreneur, you found a problem, you saw a problem, and you found the solution to it. And I think that's awesome, and that's what you have to do. And you're looking ahead too. So you see that 25% right now of most GCs, like you said, are just pre-construction, but you're looking ahead and you see as the technology evolves and as the people learn more, and as we have research and everything else coming in, and you know, I love it that you realize the need for estimators, for pre-con, for business development, for everything coming up is going to grow tenfold, you know, in the next 10 years. And you there, you saw it before. That's what entrepreneurship is. That's really awesome. That's really impressive, honestly. You know, so going off of that, what is some, and Davis, I'm kind of stealing your question like we talked about earlier, but what is some you know, advice that you would give to people coming into the industry from college, people getting into the industry, maybe if they're older and coming into it, and then, you know, your 20-year-old, if you, this is a three-part question. If you could go back to your 20-year-old self, what advice would you give yourself, knowing what you know now, going forward into the industry?
So the first part of that, advice for people coming in, and I'm actually going to take it back a little bit further in high school. I think everybody should be considering not going into construction, but at least consider construction, because back when I was going into college, we're all the same. We didn't know what to do. Maybe some people were a little bit lucky that they knew they were going to be in construction. I didn't know, and I wish now, looking back, that I had studied quantity surveying, which is a specialist estimating and pre-construction degree in Europe. I wish I had done that, because it really is a solid base for a lot of what happens in construction. So I wish I had done that. My career advice never mentioned construction. My career advisor, my parents mentioned it, and I think that's why the engineering degree with the little bit of IT was probably a good bet. But I would say people just be open to it. I mean, all these people that are said, just go IT, just go and be a programmer. It's not for everyone. And people think that construction is just dirt, boots, wellies, steel, concrete. It's much more than that, especially in the pre-construction side. You've got BIM, VDC, you've got Rivet now. And by the way, that's come on well in the last 5 years. The next 10 years, it's going to be literally construction and pre-construction is going to be made up of talent and technology. Those are the two key things that NAGC is going to need to get right in pre-construction for them to be a success. So just consider construction, I would say, for high school or secondary school people. And then when you're graduated and you're coming into the industry, Davis hit the nail on the head. Interns. Get as much interns and spread your interns. Do an internship within estimating. Do an internship within VDC, BIM VDC. Do an internship within safety, within operations. Experience all the different sides of construction, because previously it was two parts. It was estimating and building the thing. Now there's so many. There's loads. So do as much and wear as many hats as possible. Because you will find something that you thought, wow, I didn't realize BIM VDC was as cool, or I would like it as much, because there's so much to do even within that. I mean, there's digital fabrication now. I had Noni Pittinger on the podcast. She talked about digitally building something on a computer and then sending that information to a robot, and then the robot building that. I mean, this stuff's happening. There was a theater in Atlanta that they digitally fabricated a whole. It was an acoustical ceiling within a theater, and it was just incredible. She actually did a presentation at Autodesk on it. But this sort of stuff's happening. I mean, I didn't know it until I went on the podcast. So these are the kind of things that you need to understand, that there is loads of different avenues to go within construction. So experience as much as possible, be brave, ask questions, and don't be afraid to upskill yourself in your own time. There's so much material out there, whether it be BIM VDC, Rivet, Autodesk do a load of things, Beck Technology, CostX, CostOS. There's so much. Go out and try these things, because as you try them, get certified and then get it on your resume, because it'll show the interviewer that you're able to self-teach, because you'll be judged on what you do to 9 to 5, but after that, that's what you're paid on.
Wow, that was a bunch of great advice, Gareth. You know, if I could have heard that in high school, that would have been an amazing thing. Like you said, you don't even have to come into construction, but if you consider it, um, you know, I never had a career advisor in high school even mention construction. So that was one of the biggest things. And I could talk to you about that for about an hour because that's something I'm passionate about, but we'll leave that to it. But another thing that you mentioned was talking about, your internships and going and getting experience in each one. So I personally, I did pre-con, then I did PM, and now I did out in the field. And I found, personally for me, I want to be out in the field, and that's just me. But if you can do that, for any intern or for any person that's willing to come into the industry, I think that greatly benefits you. So that was a lot of good advice.
But Davis, even on yourself, you will be a better on the field PM superintendent now because you've got a little bit of an understanding of how pre-con works and how the costs go together. So that although you tried it and it wasn't for you, you will be a better field guy now because of it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point because you talk to some, the guys that are performing the work, and they don't understand what the guys in estimating are doing or what the project managers, everybody, has their role and everybody's important in construction. I think going back to, soccer, or football, as you would say, is that, it's a team. Everybody
Mm-hmm.
has their role. Not
Mm-hmm.
everybody's going to be able to score. Someone's going to have to be a defender. Someone's going to have to be midfield. You just have to fit your role. And, I think that's so important, really, in just life, but also in construction. So if I can transition really quick, let's take a step back. You've started Niche. You are the host for the Preconstruction Podcast. If you can look into the future, project, 5-7 years down the road, what are some goals that you hope to attain by then?
Within the podcast or within Niche SSP?
Both.
Both.
Both. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So the podcast was always about getting the word out on pre-construction and estimating within commercial construction. That was always, there was no real incentives. It was all about getting people talking about it because you go to any trade fair, they'll talk about project management and superintendent and operations all day long. And they may pick up an estimator along the way. I think I had a guy on there, James Hansick, he's a VP of pre-con with Gilbane in New Jersey. And he said he did a trade fair before I got him on. And he said out of 20 candidates or 20 school children, one of them came up to him and said, listen, I'm thinking about pre-con and estimating. Everybody else was all operations. So that just gives you an idea of the challenge ahead. So the podcast was always about getting the word out, getting people talking about it, because we're really good at talking internally, but the amount of construction that needs to happen in the next 2 decades is incredible. I think there's something in the next 2 decades. Steve Del Orto, I'm kind of stealing his line. There's a complete deficit, a capacity deficit into, I think it's 80 million people will be coming into or be born into the US. So the amount of hospitals, roads, schools, higher education, warehouses, the amount of houses that we have to build, it's amazing. So unless we get this right and start helping each other, because there's that old construction thing about I'm not talking about it because my competitor down the street will just take it off me and he'll be better because of it. That's not how it works. There's enough work there for everyone. It's about being able to build a bigger, better, safer world for everyone. And unless we talk about it, we can't help each other.
Man, that's fantastic. Everything you're talking about is awesome. It just kind of lines up with what me and Davis are. Our goals with this podcast as well is just getting the word out. It's just telling people, hey, this is an option. You never thought about it, but we need people. And kind of like you were just talking about, that's a fascinating statistic, about 80 million people in the next 20 years or so. I did not know that. But one thing I've heard recently was that in the next 10 years or so, around, I don't know, it's 40 or 60% of electricians even are retiring. And so the need for trades coming up as well, just of the people, the average age in construction has grown, and it's just kept on going higher and higher and higher, which is not a good thing. It should start going lower and lower and lower because you're going to have to fill that need coming up to it. But, kind of the second question of that with what your goals are, what's your goal with Niche, and how do you feel like you're going to be able to help that change or that transformation in the construction world going forward with your company?
Yeah, so Niche is all about servicing the industry, making sure that there's enough work flow of good people coming into the industry and getting those people to the right positions and helping them as much as possible, because there's so many variables about kind of candidates and clients. It's all about making sure we can do it right and getting as many value-added services out there as possible. And that just helps me to own the market. At the minute, we're the only recruitment company in the US that service solely pre-construction and estimating, and we want to stay there. And to be, you know yourself, whether it's a race or a football team, retaining the title, staying in front is difficult, and you got to be at the forefront of everything. So the podcast, just one thing. There's a few things organized for 2021 that to help us do that, a newsletter, and it's just about getting as much information out there and being accessible to people, because when people are moving jobs, and we do a lot of relocating people around the US, it's difficult. I mean, and it's a stressful time. I mean, relocating is stressful, especially if you have a young family. You got to sell your house. You got to move the kids out of college. You got to find a nice area with a nice school, with a nice house. Then you got to go out and research who are the best companies in the area. Most people just go onto LinkedIn and type in and go, right, there's the first two companies, bang, apply. Estimators and pre-construction are generally going to get a job. But what they don't do is realize, right, what do they like about their current role? What do they want in their new role? And where do they see themselves in 5 years? So if you like having flexibility or having management or just being an estimator sitting in the corner doing numbers, that's not going to tell you on the job description. Or you like the culture or the environment or the age of your team or the mentors that you have. If you're relocating and you want a really strong mentor within commercial construction that builds hospitals, I mean, nowhere in any job description is going to tell you that. So that's where we come in and we go, okay, that's simple. There's 3 companies in Colorado that we know exactly that do that and that will service you exactly. And they would never, and as well, those companies probably weren't even advertising, you know? So that person would never have got that job if it weren't for us. It's like being an agent in an NFL. You know what I mean? It's about us negotiating the best deal and the right deal for the candidate and the client, and just kind of marrying the two. So it's difficult, but the more stuff that we get out there and the more podcasts we do, the more people will know about us and understand the value that we have.
That's so great. I mean, everything you touched on today is so applicable to life and not just the construction industry. You know, I think honestly one of my favorite things that you touched on today, because you've pounded it in, you know, every single time almost, is ask questions. And I think that's invaluable. And especially like you were just talking about, most of these companies aren't advertising roles and positions, but because you've been asking questions, you'll call them and say, hey, what do you need? How can I help you? You know, what's something that I can do for you? It's just those constantly asking questions is what's enabled you to and Niche to be so successful in what y'all do with helping candidates and with helping companies. I mean, you know, we're running out of time and kind of gonna close this off towards the end.
Just one thing, Walter, that you just mentioned earlier as well is really important. You can ask a question, right? But being able to ask the second question on the question's response is even more valuable. And you said it about podcasts, and you both of you, Davis and Walker, sorry, you will both learn that through this, because there's nothing better than asking a question, getting a good answer, and then asking a question and just leading the guest down this garden path that they never thought they were going to go down. And you're just constantly gathering good information, getting good answers. So that in itself is a skill. Some people are naturally born with it, which not a lot of people are, but being able to learn it and develop it is important, both for podcasting, but also for interviewing and asking the project manager, the engineer, whoever it may be, a mentor. That's a skill that you guys, the two of you, will develop over the next 6 months, and you could not have picked a better way of learning it than interviewing people over a podcast.
Well, I mean, going along with that, I mean, that's fantastic. I think you just kind of answered it, honestly. What do you feel like is the best way for people to learn that, to practice it? I mean, would you just say asking questions, doing it over and over and over again until you start picking up patterns and realizing, hey, this is what I need to look for. This is how people tend to respond to these type of the questions, and then just kind of finding the underlying answers to their questions.
Just being conscious of it, just being conscious of it, of listening to someone's response, and then picking up of the we, but then having a goal before you ask the question. So if you ask a question, you've got to want to go to the end, so have an idea of what you want to get out of this question. And you can be direct and just go, right, give me the answer. But the best way to learn more and more is to kind of just navigate throughout a question or an answer. But yeah, being conscious of what you need to get out of it is probably the best idea, because it gets you thinking about the question you're going to ask. Because a lot of people just ask the question, as you say, they go on do an interview with 4 questions, they ask the question and then they walk out, and that's not right, because the question that you ask, you're probably 99% of the time you're probably not going to get the answer that you need for you to be able to say, you know what, I've got enough information now from that question to make a decision. It's like the thing on LinkedIn. You're going in an interviewing for an estimator position, and you ask the question, is this a new position, or is this replacing someone, or how did the position come about? So the first answer is, this is a new position, right? So if you know it's a new position, there has been no history or no deliverable set for this position. So the next question that you've got to ask is, okay, so there's a new position, so there's no track record on how I should perform. Then your next question should be, okay, what are the deliverables you want within 6 months, in 12 months? How do you see this position performing and being a success? Then the interviewer literally maps out what's expected you over the next 6 to 12 months. So you've got a clear idea, if you take this position, what's expected of you. And if the answer is, oh yeah, we had a rock star estimator that just left, then you're stepping into big shoes. So the next question then is, what made them so good? What did you like about them? So then if they answer and they say, oh, he had an incredibly outgoing personality and he brought in all this money on sales, you might look at yourself and go, yeah, this is not the position for me, because this is more business development sales side than it is actually estimating. So it's just about following up the first question with another question.
Yeah, I think that's very ironic. Last night, actually, Walker and I talked about just this. One of the things that we want to develop from doing the podcast is, we do want to ask questions. That's part of what we both believe, but it's taking the concept of what you're talking about and getting to know more, and not just being, hey, direct, because, a lot of people, like you said, you won't get the answer you want. And one of those people that I think is very good at this, I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's called Entree Leadership. It's a podcast. It's a Dave Ramsey company. I think his name is Dan, but that host of that Entree Leadership, he is really good at, he probably has notes prepared about where he wants to go, but he's amazing at listening to that person, finding the deeper meaning in the concept, and then applying that, asking a question. And, that's something that, is a skill. And I think that's an amazing talent to have.
Yeah, absolutely. And it can be learned, Davis. You're 100% right. And the more you listen to people, I only started the podcast in January. I am so far away from being a good guy, a good interviewer, that it's not even funny. Like, learning all the time. And as you say, as long as you're willing to learn, and that comes at any stage of your life. I mean, the guy that turns around and said he's nothing to learn, he knows everything, is just not the guy that you want to have around you.
Lifetime of learning. That's what I say. You get
time.
out of college, you don't stop. Learning doesn't stop when you graduate. It doesn't stop when you get out of high school. It doesn't stop when you get your job. I'm a firm believer in that every single person that you come across, every single person has something that you can take from, that you can learn from them on. I think everyone has their own experiences. Everyone has their own wisdom to give. Just being able to, like you said, ask questions, soak that up. Just being able to realize that, man, they have life experiences that I don't. What can I learn from them? What piece of wisdom, knowledge can I get from them? It's just very invaluable, like Dave was just saying.
Mm-hmm.
But man, like, again, running out of time. We don't want to take too much of your time, because I know you're a very busy man, and me and Davis are very thankful and grateful that you would come on this podcast and speak to us. What is kind of closing up, and David, you can fill in for me and ask a question that you have. But just what is the one piece of wisdom, one piece of advice that you've gotten that stuck with you that you would be willing to share with us and to our audience?
I think it was someone said to me that I tell you where it came from, and it was a problem as well. Being a footballer and a sports person and getting paid for it, confidence was all really high, right? So it was all you can call it cockiness, overconfident, brash. That's not good. It really isn't good. You've got to be life of learning. You've got to be able to learn and want to learn. I lost a good 5 or 6 years because I was in that mindset of I know everything. And it's dangerous. You need a certain amount of it, and you need to be able to make your own decisions. But you got to be able to go and ask people for advice, and don't be afraid to ask people that are doing it. Are like people are afraid to ask other people, even their competitors. How do you do that? Like literally, all the people that are doing really well will tell you they just went and asked people. How do you do that? How do you get results? That podcast, that Andre podcast that you mentioned, drop the guy a message. Say, listen, I'm just starting my podcast. Give me 3 things that I should be doing. Give me 3 books I should be reading. That's the way you get better. Nobody has ever got to the top without getting help or assistance or asking for help. And it's something that us male guys are not very good at, asking for help. Literally, mental health, education, professional help. That's what it's all about. We got to ask for help, and it's not even help. It's just assistance. It's just like, listen. And then when people like yourselves, Davis and Walker, when people reach out to you, you got to be willing to give up your time. That's the only way to give back.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it a lot, Gareth. I can't remember. It was some point at last year I reached out to you, and I'm thankful that you responded. I wasn't expecting it, but it's been an awesome relationship that I've gotten to grow with you, and I appreciate you willing to be on the podcast with us and just willing to have a conversation with us today.
Yeah, fair play to you guys. You're going to do a great job. Looking forward to following your story.
Oh, Gareth, thank you so much, man. So thankful for you and the time you spent and what you're doing for this industry. But just, again, thank you so much.
No worries, lads. Stay in touch.